Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show on News Talk 95.1 FM and 790 AM KFYO. Thank you very much for tuning in today. We go to the phones. Joining us right now, Matt Mackowiak, Republican strategist. Matt, good morning. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Doing great. A lot to get into nationally and statewide. And I want to start with a story that came out I guess it was earlier this morning, and it's been published in a few different places. Washington Examiner headline, Texas Republicans fear Trump could lose the state in 2020. It says Texas GOP Chairman James Dickey delivered a message to the Trump campaign, the RNC, GOP donors, and activists in the state saying that it's possible that Trump could lose the state in 2020. What are you hearing about this, and how big of a possibility is this in your mind?
Well, I mean, look, I think in an absolute worst-case scenario, which I think is what they're probably preparing for, it could be competitive. Obviously, you start from where we ended in November with Cruz winning the Senate race by a fairly shocking 2.6% margin. You know, that was really the combination of the Beto effect plus straight ticket, and I think you're going to have, I know you're not going to have straight ticket next time, and Beto, I think, is highly unlikely to be on the ballot in Texas. So I think that's probably a little overstated. That said, look, let's be honest about Trump. I mean, he has particular strength and particular weakness in specific areas. In rural areas, he is very, very, very strong, and he will almost surely help Republicans overperform in a presidential election in rural areas. The challenge is that in urban areas, he's obviously very weak, and then in suburban areas, he's been increasingly weak in terms of the way suburban voters, who are generally more diverse and more college educated than the average, view him. So, look, I mean, if you look at it from the state party's perspective, they obviously really want a much better performance next November 2020, than they had in 2018. They're going to need significantly more resources and more investment at all levels. And so my guess is they want, the White House, and really more so the Trump campaign, to take Texas seriously in 2020, to invest in the ground effort here, and to help them make up those margins. Look, 2020 is a hugely consequential election in Texas. Set aside the presidential election, which obviously is hugely important, but going into a redistricting in January of 2021, if Democrats are able to strengthen their hand, that's going to affect the map for the next 10 years. And I think Democrats are going to try to take the Texas House back. I mean, there's an 8-seat majority based on where we stand today. So that's not outside the realm of possibility. So there are huge ramifications for the midterm. I think with the state parties taking it very seriously and just trying to basically send a signal to the Trump campaign, you can't take Texas for granted.
Yeah, and I would also assume that a lot of this has to deal with who the nominee for the Democrats is going to be. And it seems like right now it is a race to who can get furthest left without coming across as too crazy, perhaps. Is that kind of what we're seeing lined up for the Democrats?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a fantasy land right now, because they're all, pushing very expensive proposals, not telling anyone what those things will cost, not telling anyone how they'll pay for it. Their basic answer when you ask them to show the math is, well, the Trump team said the tax cuts would pay for themselves. So that's obviously the kind of whataboutism they generally complain about when it's done in reverse. Yeah, I mean, this is a race to the far left, and it's one of the reasons why Howard Schultz, the former CEO of Starbucks, is seriously considering spending hundreds of millions of dollars running as an independent candidate, because he sees, obviously Trump his numbers are really not strong nationally. He's anywhere between the high 30s and at the best mid 40s. So there's obviously some room there to pull some disaffected Republicans. But then when he sees the Democrats moving so far to the left, I think he believes there's an opportunity to capture that 40% in the middle if he can get on the ballot in 50 states and get in the nationally televised debates. So, yeah, we don't know which way the Democratic primary is going to go. It's going to be very unwieldy and unpredictable. I imagine there's 4 or 5 people that have a legitimate, chance to be the nominee. What I would say is it's going to be interesting to see whether purity or electability drives the Democratic presidential primary. Right now, I think it's purity, and in some ways it's identity. They don't want an old white male And so people who are old, white, and male are I think going to have unique challenges, and obviously that would particularly affect Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden if Biden runs. But at some point, it's going to, I think, get beyond that, and they're going to start, fighting over issues, but then also looking at who can actually, beat Trump, because that's what motivates and unifies all Democrats.
Yesterday or last night was Kamala's first town hall meeting that she had on CNN, and obviously Republicans did not like what she had to say about Medicare for all, and that if you like your private insurance, if you like your health care plan, too bad, which is a big reversal from the Obama years, which was you could keep your plan if you like your plan, which we all know did not work out. But her plan is if you like your plan, too bad, you're going to have Medicare for all. Is that a winning strategy? Forget about the Democrats. It seems like that is a winning strategy for the Democrats. Is that a winning strategy for a general election?
I don't think it is. And she kind of framed it in through the lens of everybody hates their insurance company, so let's just stop dealing with them altogether.
Yeah.
That's probably not a bad angle to take, given the other options that were probably available. But no, I mean, you have millions, tens of millions, probably, of people in America that have employer-based health care through their insurance company that their private employer provides that they're very satisfied with. And that's actually the dirty little secret about so-called Medicare for all that very few people have focused on, and that is that it would necessitate ending the private health care industry. Basically, it would make it's effectively a single payer system. So, they're kind of using the word Medicare because, older people generally feel like Medicare is pretty good because they get things paid for that they wouldn't be able to pay for on their own, and in many cases things that probably the taxpayers shouldn't be paying for. Hip replacement for 85 and 90-year-old people may not be the wisest investment. Yeah, I mean, look, I actually think if you step back, Chad, and you kind of view this through a Democrat's eyes, I think Kamala Harris has had a fairly good launch.
Oh, absolutely.
She had 20,000 people in Oakland on Sunday. She apparently raised $1.5 million from all 50 states in the first 48 hours when she announced last week on, I think she was on one of the morning shows during the week. So she is sort of achieving liftoff in this race. California's moved up. It's going to be earlier than it's ever been before. In fact, you're going to be early voting in California before the Iowa caucuses are held. She's going to have a huge financial base, and as I said before, she's not a white male. In fact, she's an African-American female, and so in many ways she may be one of the more attractive candidates. I suspect she will be one of their finalists on their side. Now, she has problems. Her prosecutor record is going to be combed over, very, very, very carefully. She apparently didn't appropriately insult billionaires last night on the town hall, so I saw there was some blowback from that. So, look, we're going to be in this kind of silly season. I'm kind of appalled that there are already town halls, basically, 19, 20 months before the presidential election.
Well, when you have 65 people who may want to run, you got to have time to get them all in, right?
You need all the time you can get. Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you. I'm not really ready to start, committing an hour of my life each week for a CNN town hall with some Democrat. But we'll see. Look, this thing's obviously getting going, and keep in mind the televised debates on the Democratic side start in June. So over the next 2 months, we're going to have a pretty good sense of who's in and who's out. I think the next really big question is Joe Biden in or not? He's kind of waffled. He sent some signals. It's not clear what his decision is going to be.
Matt, I honestly don't see a path for Joe Biden. One, he's not very good at running for president, but like you said, the identity politics of this thing, it kind of ruins him. The old white guy just can't run right now, it seems like.
Yeah, look, Biden's the one, I think I've told you this before, he's the one candidate on their side that worries me most in terms of Trump's reelection, because I think he would fundamentally alter the Trump path to 270 electoral votes, particularly through Pennsylvania, and then perhaps through places like Wisconsin and Michigan. He would be very competitive in those states. He understands those voters. He grew up that way. He kind of has lived that life through much of his adult life. Really hadn't come into any real money until the last few years. He does have some problems. The crime bill in the 90s that he authored has, now fallen out of favor. He's got the way he handled the Clarence Thomas, Supreme Court hearings, News Judiciary Committee chairman. So that'll be an issue. So look, he's got some problems. I do think I agree with you. I think there's probably not a clear path to him being the nominee unless electability becomes what drives Democratic primary voters. If it's about purity and about identity, he's not going to be a factor. The fact that he's got high name identification, he's a former vice president, he's got the gravitas that comes with that, he's sort of the natural heir to the Obama legacy. He's got some things to work with, and he's got some long-term relationships, and I imagine he'll be able to raise more money than he's been able to raise in the past. So it's not that he's got nothing to work with. I think for him, he's going to hope that the field narrows quickly after a few of those early states, and that ultimately he can convince Democratic primary voters that he's the one to take on Trump, that he's tough enough, that he's prepared, he's ready to be president, and that he sort of meets their ideological needs. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see whether he pulls the trigger or not. I'm not sure he's up to it physically, that he really wants to spend the next 16 months running for president every minute of every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, tell folks how they can sign up for your morning newsletter, and then also who your guest and what your topic is of your next podcast.
Yeah, so we just taped an episode late last week with Victor Cha, who was on the National Security Council, leading kind of the Korea department over there. He's an expert on North Korea. He was actually Trump's kind of finalist to be U.S. ambassador to South Korea, but he ended up pulling out and withdrawing. So great conversation with him. I'm actually taping an episode tomorrow with Steve Kornacki of MSNBC, who's written a great book about the 90s and Newt Gingrich and kind of how that led to the era we're in now. We're going to talk to him about Howard Schultz in 2020. That should be posting tomorrow. You can find my Mac on Politics podcast on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Spotify, and on Google Play, also on the web at maconpoliticspodcast.com, and our morning newsletter for Texas politics, where we take all the news from around the state, put it in one email, delivered to 3,000 Texans every weekday morning, is called Must Read Texas. You can sign up for a free 1-week trial at mustreadtexas.com.
All right, very good. Matt, as always, appreciate your time. We'll visit with you next week.
Take care.
Have a good one. That's Matt Mackowiak here on the Chad Hasty Show.